said, we have $325,000 bid. Do you want to sell it? And he looked at me like this and he goes, well, yes. It's like we took the reserve off and then we fired it up to him and he proceeded to just wrap those keys. It was a really cool moment.
That is
was
great.
neat.
You should have sold that piano too.
Yeah, right.
Today on That Car Show, we're joined by Sam Murtaugh, Chief Operating Officer of Mecum Auctions. You know Mecum, and with Car Week just around the corner, they're gearing up for another huge presence. You're going to like Sam too. We quickly discovered we have a lot in common, and it made for a fun conversation. Mecum, of course, has exploded in recent years, becoming one of the world's premier collector car auction houses and selling some of the most significant cars and collections on the planet. So stick around as we go behind the scenes of the collector car auction world, talk about what it takes to bring these incredible cars to market, and hear Sam's perspective on where the market and the hobby are headed. It's Sam Murtaugh from Mecum Auctions, and it's That Car Show. Hey, it's That Car Show, and we're glad you're here because we've got another really great guest today. Even if you've never been to one of their auctions in person, you've almost certainly seen a Mecum auction on television. Sam Murtaugh joined Mecum in 2008 and has served as Chief Operating Officer since 2021. He oversees marketing, media, strategic initiatives, and a lot more, I'm sure. So Sam, I have 1,000 questions for you. Before we dive in, though, I should mention it's just me, Ryan, with you today. Dan and Lindsay are both out dealing with family matters. Sam, welcome to That Car Show.
Thank you, Ryan. Happy to be here.
Yeah, as we talked a little bit before we hit record, I understand that you're a Chicago guy, grew up in the Western Burbs. I assume you've always been a car guy?
Yeah, I've been a car guy most of my life. I would say probably really bit the bug when I was 16, not just because it was driver's license time, but my first job in high school was at a car wash, full service car wash. So wiping down cars for tips, that kind of thing.
Really? Yeah.
And really just start, it's funny when you get a chance to drive, I would say in air quotes, because you're really driving it like 20 feet to a parking spot. Yeah. But really kind of rubbing your hands across all the cars and really really getting intimate with them in that way over and over and over and over and over, hundreds of cars a day, especially on the weekends, that you really I started to connect with cars that way and really started to, memorize, makes and models and body styles, and when body styles would change and all that. And it really became almost kind of gamified it in such a way. So doing that throughout high school was really where I kind of bit the bug. When I graduated into really getting into more, heavier detailing of cars, not just wiping them off for car washes, is really when I started to really kind of sink my teeth into the world.
Sure.
It's funny, when I was in this detail center at that same car wash where I worked, and we were grow up Chicagoland area. This was in a town called Mundelein, which is about, 15 minutes west of Lake Forest, Illinois, which is where the Chicago Bears practice.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the players would live out in and around our area. And Richard Dent, he'd retired, but he still lived that way, started bringing in Lincoln Continentals. He had a big Lincoln Continental collection. And so he would bring these things in, like one a week. He'd bring them in and we'd detail them for him. So I really got to know him and his cars. And that's really kind of where started to get into the classic car connectivity. Before that, it was mostly the late model, everyday driver stuff. But I really just, had some really good conversations with him. And kind of understood what, why was he collecting these things and what drew him to. He just loved those suicide door convertibles, and being a massive human being, the large car made a lot of sense for him, right? So that was kind of my first interaction on the collector car side, and that's back in that was in the early 90s.
It's funny you mentioned him because he had an office in the building I worked at Wacker, Michigan. And it was this old building, 1930s Art Deco building, small elevators. And sometimes he'd walk in and take up a good part of the elevator, but always a very nice guy. I didn't know that he was a car guy at the time. But
super nice guy. Yeah, it's funny, full circle loop. So I fast forward to like 2 years ago, he was a guest of a member of the golf club that I'm a member at for a member guest, and he was there, and I saw him at the dinner that night, and I reintroduced myself and told him the story that, of course, 20 some odd, 30 years later, 30 years probably, later, fast forward, I asked him, told him about that and what I did for him, and it took him a minute, and I don't know if he was just being nice to me
Sure,
remembering it,
sure.
but it was kind of a cool full circle moment to reconnect with him 30 years later and talk about it, his
That
Lincolns.
that is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, he always seemed like a nice guy. And I'm thinking, I was really into detailing cars at that point in my life. We're probably about the same age. And if I recall correctly, it was a lot of armor all. Like that was a lot of
Yeah,
armor all.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Everything would be
yeah, big
very
time. Just
slick and greasy.
the goopier, the better
Yeah.
inside. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, fast forward. I'm curious to your journey to Mecum.
Yeah, so kind of carrying on the detailing side of things, as I was going through school and continuing to work for it was Turtle Wax was the name of the company that
Oh,
around
okay.
Chicagoland they had full service car washes
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
around the Chicagoland area at Kansas City. So I was a manager for them, going through their management program at the same time, and I was based out of a store on a car wash at North in Elston in
I
Chicago.
used to go to that
Um,
car wash.
did you really?
That's how small this world is. Yeah,
Probably
yeah,
helped you out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
yeah.
cool.
That's funny.
So, anyways, I was down there for a while, and then when I moved back out to the suburbs, I moved out back towards Mundelein, out in the Grays Lake area, and um, at that point started to think, toy around with the idea of doing something on my own, and
Sure.
um, since detailing cars and the car passion that I'd been developing sort of seemed like that's the realm that I wanted to be in. It wasn't necessarily detailing cars that really was my passion. It was the cars
Yeah.
themselves. And so this was just sort of my pipeline, right? And so using
Yeah.
that, I started developing my own detailing company. Um, and turned it was a remote detailing company. At the time, it wasn't really vogue. It wasn't really a thing.
Sure.
It was there, it was out there, but it wasn't as
Yeah.
popular as it is now. Um, and so kind of went down that path as I was still working for Turtle Wax eventually. And then one of the stores that I was responsible for was out in Crystal Lake, Illinois.
Mm.
And there was a guy that was bringing in very similar story to Richard Dent. Once a week, he
Mm.
was bringing in these classic cars. He was more Mustangs and Shelbys,
Okay.
but was bringing in one car a week to have us just keep them up to speed. It was more maintenance detailing than it was
Sure.
anything
Sure.
else because they were nice cars. Um, but just started picking this guy's brain and he was a one man band. He just liked Shelbys and Mustangs and
Yeah.
collected them. And he had amassed a building full of them. He had like 20 or 30 of them. And I didn't really understand that at the time and realized that there was a lot of others that were that like-minded that
Right.
accumulated such, collections like that. And so my sort of entrepreneurial brain started just kind of gears turning, whatever. I got to know him pretty well, eventually invited me out to his place. I saw his
Mm.
cars and got to become friendly with him, and sort of helped him on the side. And it was just fun tinkering with these old cars and getting involved with them. And then one day, this is probably, I don't know, 2005-ish, something around there. He said he was going to sell a couple of these cars and he was going to take them to this auction in Kansas City, and asked if I wanted to go tag along with him to help him take care of the cars and keep them ready and just help him with the process. Well, it was a Mecum auction in Kansas City. At the time,
Ah.
I'd A, never been to an auction before, B, let alone a collector car auction. And so it was intriguing. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll go with you. So I went and it blew my mind. And again, this is back 2005. So
Mhm.
I don't know, what's that? 20 plus years ago to
Yeah.
over 20.
Got to think about that.
Yeah.
2
23
decades. Yeah.
years. Yeah. Two
Yeah.
decades. So anyways, went there and just was completely blown away by what was happening, the
Yeah.
process of what was happening. And there
Right.
was 500 cars in one building. And I was impressed by this guy's 30 cars in a building,
Mm-hmm.
let alone 500 of all different types of cars and mainly American muscle cars, Corvettes, things like that. Um, and just watching these guys sell a car every few minutes was like,
Yeah.
it was mind blowing. And I think, had I really familiarized myself with the auctions prior to that, I probably wouldn't have been as intrigued, but it was my first experience of a live
Yeah.
auction,
Yeah.
coupled with the cars that they were and just what was happening in the community that was there was intoxicating. So,
Yeah.
and the guy that I was with, he bit the auction bug. at that moment. He was in so had such a good time. We sold the 2 cars he brought. I think he
Mhm.
bought like 3 or 4 more, which wasn't in his plans, but that's what he ended up doing because
Yeah,
he was
yeah,
so excited to be there. It's like a kid in
yeah.
a candy store, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Um, so as he kind of sort of, I would say we like, joined the circus, so to speak. He was going to multiple events at the time. I think Mecum was doing, I don't know, 8 or 9 different auctions a year.
Okay.
We started going to all of them. And then since I was at the first one, he kept inviting me to go to the next one and the next one. So through that as a customer, I'd help
Yeah.
him with paperwork and titles and things like that.
Okay.
As a customer, I started to get to know the Mecum family that way. And, at the time was very small operation. Everything was, everyone wore multiple hats and did different
Mm.
things. And, um, I really developed a good working relationship with Harold Gertis, who is currently our VP of auction operations,
Okay.
still with us today. He was a consignment agent at the time while he was building out the auctions and operating. It
Huh.
was, like I said, everyone was doing multiple things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, so, through my developing a relationship with him, I got to know Frank Mecum, who was, just coming out of college at the time. Um, and by way of all those relationships, eventually got to know Dana pretty well. And, uh, fast forward into like 2008, um, I left Turtle Wax and I was working full time on my own. And so this gentleman that I was been referring to was one of my bigger clients
Mm.
for this remote detailing business. Right. And, this was right when Mecum was it got its first TV contract. Back then it
Ah,
was HD Theater. It was a Discovery Network channel they called
sure.
HD Theater that became Velocity, which became Motor Trend. Uh, and when I learned that they were doing these live auctions on TV, I asked Dana and Frank, I said, well, what are you guys doing to guarantee that the sellers all make sure that their cars are clean before they show up on television? And they're like, well, they hadn't really thought about that. And so then Mecum became a customer. And
Interesting.
so I had teams would go down and clean the cars prior to crossing the auction block and dusting them off on the stage, and sort of added a piece of entertainment value to the show by, kind of
Right.
wiping the things off of it. So that's really how I got really
Huh.
first involved with Mecum. Um, and then very shortly thereafter, in the fall of 2008, when the market went to hell, um, most of my clients that I had, non-Mecum clients, I was down to 3 big main
Mm.
clients was all I could handle, and it was
Mm.
fine. But 2 of the 3 basically evaporated overnight,
Mm.
and so I was kind of flailing around, not knowing what I was going to do. I
Yeah.
kind of put my eggs in one basket, so to speak, which wasn't necessarily the smartest thing to do. Um, but then, so that one day Dana asked me what I was doing, and I just said, I really don't know, to be honest with you. And he just said, well, why don't you come work for me full time? So I said, well, keep flailing over here or take a steady paycheck over here. And I
Yeah.
chose the steady paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so that's how I got here. And that
Yeah.
was back in 2008. And, the rest is history, so to speak.
Yeah.
But so I was originally hired to take care of Dana's personal collection. At the time, he had about 150 cars, and that was my full time role, was just take care
Mm.
of his cars, and that's that. Um, Slowly but surely, as I continued to understand the business and have more conversations, Dana would give me a project here, a project there, something different, and, eventually invited me to come work out of the main office, which is in Marengo, Illinois at the time.
Sure.
Um, I want to say I was like the 12th or 15th full-time employee
Mm.
hired. Um, that so it was cool. I mean, one day um, there was a I guess I would call it a fight between Dana and the marketing director at the time. I wasn't privy to what took place or what was going on, but he eventually left the company, and uh, Dana saw I had a bit of an eye for design and,
Yeah. Yeah.
marketing brain and, some business sense and that, and so he had me get more involved in the marketing side. And at the time, that was the marketing department at Mecum at that time was then myself and 2 other people, neither of which had marketing backgrounds. Um, and so really I was starting from scratch and just continued to build what was necessary to help support the growth that was happening being on television, or as the brand was continuing to
Yeah.
grow from that visibility. And we kept scaling accordingly along with it. And, fast forward today, I think we've got a full blown marketing agency here in house, about 35 people strong, and
Really?
covering
Wow.
all the aspects of it. And, so, um, I can't take full credit for that. Obviously a big team effort with a lot of things going on,
Sure.
but to grow something from that was zero to what it is today it's pretty proud to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it all started with that chance meeting. That's so cool.
Yeah,
It's just who
total
you are.
luck. I
Yeah.
I wouldn't say luck, but right place, right time,
And hard
combine,
work.
all the things, right? And hard work,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's one of the things that I pride myself on, is just being a, hard worker with strong work ethics, and
Yeah.
the rest kind of takes care of itself. If you do the right things and work hard, things usually work out.
That's for sure. When I told a friend in the industry that we were going to have someone from Mecum on the show, the first words out of their mouth were, Dana Mecum is a genius. So let's go back to the very beginning for Mecum, because I have no idea really. Was it farm implements or something? I mean, right? It wasn't always collector cars.
So the Mecum family has been in the car business, I mean, forever. Dana's dad
Okay.
was a car dealer. He was at one time the
Ah,
largest fleet dealer in the United States, wholesale fleet dealer. He had a Pontiac store at
oh,
one
okay.
point in
Wow.
time. Eventually had what was called the Speedway Auto Mall in Rockford, Illinois.
Okay.
So Dana
Okay.
grew up in the car business
Okay.
from his
Okay.
father. Dana, to the point of Dana being a genius, he's brilliant. Um, and one of the things about Dana, he's always constantly looking to differentiate himself, always.
Hmm.
And, you know, um, working for his dad in the dealerships, he learned the industry that way. And I don't know how he acquired them, but at some point in time, he had done some trade deal and ended up with a bunch of tractor trailers. They were like semi trailers or something like
Okay.
that, or the tractors. I'm not sure which,
Sure.
the
Sure.
power or the trailer. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Maybe
Um,
that's what I read, and
yeah, 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 yeah.
saw tractor.
Over the road haulers.
Right.
And however he acquired those via whatever he did, ended up trading those for a group of muscle cars.
Hmm.
And when he had the muscle cars, then not, trying to figure out the best way to sell those. Sure, he could retail them one at a time and do that route, but he decided that he thought the best way to get rid of those would be to hold an auction. So in 1988, he started an auction at
Hmm.
I think it was at the Rockford Airport, and got some of his, friends and colleagues and whatever to bring some of their cars so on top of what he had already
Sure.
amassed and built, and they had their first event.
Huh.
Um,
Huh.
so that's how it really got started. As him looking to differentiate himself and what the best way to sell those cars was. And back in '88, 60s and late '60s, early '70s muscle cars, they were still borderline just used cars at the time. They
Yeah.
weren't. Obviously there was collectability within certain aspects of them, but by and large they weren't what they are today. So,
Yeah.
I think, we've definitely that's really how we got our names out there as in the beginning, as, being the muscle car and Corvette auctions, is
Yeah.
really because of that start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
And Meekum's still family owned. Yeah.
yes, 100%. Yeah.
Which
Family
is
owned.
unique.
Dana's still working every day. I think
Yeah.
he works 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, and I'm not sure when he sleeps. But his brain is always on how to evolve this, how to make it better, what can we do to
Yeah.
change and
Yeah.
evolve. And he's got 4 sons. All 4 sons are involved with the company. Frank Mecum runs our consignment division and runs the sales team. He's the one you see on the auction block doing deals and
Sure.
all that
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah.
sellers. And
Yeah.
Harry Mecum is our CFO. And Dan and Ben, various things around the company. So yeah, they're all part of it. Even
Yeah.
their mom, Dana's wife Patty, was here working full time up until probably about 10 years ago.
Okay.
Um, but she was right there with it. So yeah, the Meekum boys have been doing this thing since day one.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess we're kind of getting at this, but, I was going to ask what makes Meekum different than, say, Gooding or Broad Arrow. And I guess being family owned is obviously a large part of, what
Yeah,
differentiates you.
yeah, I would say, the biggest differentiator for us is that, Dana has always been about volume and quantity.
Hmm.
That's really been, and that's, we've evolved from that mindset to, we have, now we're looking, it's volume of quality, not just
Yeah.
quantity. Um, how that's taken an organic evolution over the years. But, with the frequency of events, we do, more events with frequency throughout the United States than most of the other auction companies. Uh, the the range in values is something that differentiates us. We'll
Right.
happily consign and sell your $10,000 whatever you might have, all the way up to, like for example, Kissimmee back in January, we sold a Ferrari GTO for
Yeah.
$38.5 million, and everything in between, right? And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, while we're not just, we'll take anything, so to speak,
Sure.
our platform is much more diverse and much more wide and much more, I would say, welcoming to the masses. And there's car enthusiasm in all the various segments, all the way up from, the home built car that doesn't have a brand name attached to it, all the way up
Hmm.
to, I would say, Ferrari and everything in between. There's so many different segments of this car collecting community, enthusiasts, that, you know, I think our brand resonates with just far more of those people
Yeah.
across the
Yeah.
board, and we're not trying to isolate or alienate any piece of that segment.
Yeah.
Everyone
Yeah.
is welcome to be part of what we do. And I think that
Yeah.
that combined with our family atmosphere and being a Midwest company,
Hmm.
the Midwest values that most of our employees have, that is very welcoming, and connecting that to the Mecum family that's part of this. You can really feel that when you come to our events, you can really feel that connectivity. And I think that
Yeah.
really is something that separates us.
Yeah, there's an entertainment aspect, as we were talking about before. It started with you polishing the cars, right, live on
Yeah,
TV,
yeah,
right, and it's a
sure.
spectacle in the very best way, right, in a way that the other
Yeah,
auctions aren't, right. And I think you've democratized the collector car auctions, right, in a way too, right. They're comfortable, and you've expanded. You have a transport service, right, and you finance cars now, right.
yeah,
I mean, you
yeah.
really are the whole the whole deal, which is pretty impressive. But you mentioned that Ferrari, Sam, and I want to talk about that because I think the two biggest, I guess, Mecum stories in recent months were that Ferrari and then the Bachmann Ferrari collection. So
Mhm,
this was called the Bianco Speciale. It was a
mhm.
1962 Ferrari 250 GTO, like the Ferrari, right? A rare white color. When you sell something like that, or you have the Bachmann collection, come through your doors, is it just a different vibe? It's got to be, right? Like you kind of know that history is being made. There's got to be an energy in the air, huh?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, with the Bachmann collection, just what those cars were, I knew it was going to be special when we
Yeah.
when we consigned those cars and we're preparing that and starting to market those cars. What Phil Bachmann and his wife Martha amassed over the years, I mean, really was extremely unique. I mean, for him to, spec build a car
Yep.
almost every year along the way, and as he got later and later, and that I would say the cars got more and more unique from a
Yeah.
color perspective.
Yeah.
Um, you know that that was it was I knew it was going to be special.
Yeah.
The final results far exceeded my expectations. I was blown away by the results.
Yeah.
But really, when I boiled it down afterwards, I wasn't surprised. And
Mm-hmm.
why I say that is because, these cars, a collection like that, everybody knew of Phil Bachman
Mm-hmm.
and his collection and how special it was. But everybody knew that those cars were never for sale. Phil was never
Right.
had any intention of selling any of them. So they were unobtainium essentially.
Yep.
And they were unicorns in their own right because of their
Yeah.
special
Yeah.
builds. And so to have something that was never going to be available, that was a unicorn to begin with, and then all of a sudden, not only is something available, but all of them are available at one time, it really was the moons really aligned for that particular collection and
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
it was a bit of a feeding frenzy to get their hands on those cars, which was it was you want to talk about entertainment, just to be in that room and watch that
I bet.
unfold was
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
special. Yeah.
It was kind of like the closest thing to the Sultan of Brunei's collection that we had on our shores, right? As far as spec and uniqueness and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
He was a car dealer in Tennessee or something, right?
Yeah.
That's how he made
Yep.
his
Yeah.
money. And
Multiple dealerships in Tennessee, Middle Tennessee.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, he used to come out and do the Colorado Grand, which I'm a part of. I never got to meet him. He was before
Yeah.
my time,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. There was a lot of pictures of him with his son. They did that, I think,
yeah.
almost annually. So yeah, it
Yes,
was,
yes, yes.
yeah.
And I hear all the time about what a nice man, what nice people they were. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and hell of a collection. It was so cool to see that happen, to get the numbers you got, and in a hobby where so many people just get the red over tan Ferrari or the silver Porsche,
Yeah.
right? I'm guilty of that.
Yeah.
It was fun to see those cars for sure. Okay, so you put on what? I'm just looking at my notes. Over a dozen live auctions a year.
Yep.
The Kissimmee, Florida, I think is still the big one. Can
Yep.
you take me behind the scenes of one of your auctions? Because like I said before, these are big productions. They're genuinely entertaining, but they also have to be incredibly complicated logistically. I can't imagine can you give us a peek behind the curtain, at one of your auctions? What's going on? What don't we see on television?
Yeah. I mean, the auction schedule, the calendar itself is I like to call it sort of a dysfunctional concert tour because we don't, unlike a concert tour that sort of travels, in a very systematic line around
Right.
and it creates a lot of efficiency. We can't do that because, we can't go from Florida to Georgia in the same, one
Mm,
after the other. But obviously our events have a lot of regionality to them.
sure.
Um, from a seller's perspective, and then from buyers obviously come from everywhere, including all over the world. So, take Kissimmee, for example, which is the largest live collector car auction in the world. Pushes 5,000 cars over a span
Wow.
of 12 days. To your point, that's a lot. There is a lot of logistics that go into that.
Yeah.
We're planning that event all year long. I just had a 2-hour meeting this morning specifically about Kissimmee for January 2027 and the things that we have to do to get
Mm,
prepared to execute that event. Where it starts early January, first week, about 4 or 5 days after the new year, depending on where the calendar falls.
okay.
Um, and so we're down there before Christmas, starting to
Really?
set things up. So, there's over 13 acres of tents that have to get put up. Obviously we don't do that. We have our tenting contractors
Sure.
that do that for us, but the planning, making sure that we have everything set. Once those tents are set, they're not going anywhere. So you got to make sure that everything is mapped out, ready to go in alignment so that the tent company can execute, get that ready. That sort of starts to formalize the infrastructure for what the rest of the event that we build around it
Hmm.
becomes. Kissimmee, we're fortunate to have an arena where we
Okay.
hold the auction. So the auction is at Osceola Heritage Park in Kissimmee and the Silver Spurs Arena there, which is actually where the
Mm,
Orlando Magic's G League team plays.
okay.
It's like I think I don't know, 5,000 seat arena
Okay.
um, that we kind of shave the back third off and then create a bowl surrounding the audience, where the rest of the stadium acts as the seating area, and then we carry that seating from the bowl, so to speak, down into the floor with raised decking that comes down and set the whole stage up that way. So
Mm,
everything transacts inside that arena, and then we build everything out from there. So we've got to create displays for all the different cars. That's all organized by day, by lot number. So there's whole teams that are responsible for after when vehicles come in, they go through a check-in process.
okay.
So every vehicle that we have comes through, gets the VIN checked, VIN verified against the title to make sure that there's no funky VIN, there's no manipulation.
Mm,
If we find anything funky, then we start to look for secondary numbers to make sure that the car is legitimate and transferable. Uh, and after that, then the drivers take it through every car has its designated position. Then those drivers
okay.
take it out to their spots, they park them. Then there's inside there, we have what we call lot managers, and those lot managers are responsible for their area. And then they make sure all the cars are there, set right, ready to go and recorded. Everything gets scanned in, scanned out of the different zones so we don't lose any cars or nothing gets
Okay.
lost, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, it's a continual cycle movement, and then once everything gets parked, then everything starts to make its way to the staging lanes before it comes to the auction, and then it comes through
Mhm.
there. Whether it sells, if it doesn't sell, that determines
Sure.
it might go to a different place, to a sold lot versus a still for sale lot. Um, so there's a lot of logistics, and we're fortunate because we have
Yeah.
a really um, dedicated staff that really is truly passionate about what they do, and that's they make the difference. I mean, that the fact
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
take ownership in all those different facets of the company is really what makes it all work.
Yeah. How many Mecum folks travel, when you put on a big event like that?
Well, from like Kissimmee, so we have about 160, 70 full-time employees here in Wisconsin. Um, and probably about half of that
Okay.
travels.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, the rest of the half keeps the balls moving here at home and working
Yeah.
forward
Yeah.
while the rest of us go down there. And then Kissimmee, we've got probably a couple hundred what we call auction only employees. So they still
Okay.
travel to all the events throughout the country. But that is their primary role. They only go to the events. They don't report here to the office. Um, so and that's a mix of retirees that
Sure.
want to just kind of stay busy. So we've got a combination of people like that. We've got folks that they're literally just they're good with just traveling and doing those events, and they've got other things they do in between. All of our auctioneer staff are all contractors. They're working other auctions throughout the
Ah, okay.
year. Whether it be most of them work like wholesale dealer auctions, things like that,
Mm,
as on their weekly stuff um, in between our events. But the consistency of those people, we could probably just as easily find local labor in all the different places that
sure.
we go. But if we did that, we would lose the consistency of our service and customer service levels, and that's
Right.
that's big. That's a big thing for us. We don't want to do that. So, there's a big expense attached to traveling all those people all over the place. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it makes the Mecum experience what it needs to be, and it's worth doing. So that's
Right.
why we do it.
Right. Right. And you do 12 to 14 of these auctions around the country each year. You just had a really successful auction in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
What goes into deciding where you hold these auctions? Because to your point, you're bopping around all
Yeah, we
across the
have to
country, and
we have to bop it around, right? So I
yeah.
mean, if we're in Florida in January, then we take February to regroup, and then we're in Glendale, Arizona in March. So we go
Okay.
from the East Coast to the West Coast, and then in April we go back to Texas. We're in Houston in April, um, and then we go to Indianapolis in May,
Right.
and then June we go to Tulsa, Oklahoma for a little auction there, a little 2-day event there.
Okay.
And then July we go to Harrisburg. Um, it was just last weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then we jump over to Monterey in a couple of weeks
Yep.
for Pebble Beach week, and then to September we have our first inaugural event in Nashville, Tennessee in September.
Okay.
So we're excited about that one. That one's really, really building a lot of momentum, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement for that event. So we're excited about that. We're going to build an event inside the infield of the Nashville Super Speedway. So we're going
Oh,
to set up
cool.
a
Cool.
set up a whole auction event inside the track. So that'll be kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So what data points go into these locations? Is it, just places you haven't been? Is it, I guess it's the demographics, it's population centers, it's
it's all that stuff. I mean, it's
yeah,
all that combined. I mean, obviously we look at, where our existing customer base is, where are they coming from, and that adds a factor. Obviously, population is a factor.
yeah,
Ease of, commuting to the various cities is a factor. And then also where can we go that's not competing with places we already are? That's where the
yeah,
matrix really gets interesting because
yeah,
you don't want to cannibalize one live event from another of our own. So, it wouldn't work for us to go from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to Philadelphia
mm-hmm.
in the same time zone. It,
Sure,
it just doesn't work. So you have to take
yeah,
that into account. And then really it also comes down to venue capacity and what venues can support what we do. That shrinks it down to a finite number as it is, right?
right,
So, people might say, I don't understand. Why aren't you in Chicago? It's in your backyard. Well, we used to be in Schaumburg, and we
right,
haven't
right,
been for a number of years. Well, the reason is that there's the venue choices aren't really great for what we do and how we do
Mm,
it. And then the other part of it is time of year, right? So doing an auction in the Midwest in the middle of winter is extremely difficult. It doesn't
right.
really make sense. It's also,
Right.
to somebody from California want to go spend a few days in Chicago in the middle of February? Probably not.
Right. Right.
But one of the reasons January in Florida is so successful is because the time of year it's a winter escape for anyone that's in the north.
Yep.
Um, and it's a natural vacation spot for really, everything east of the Mississippi. Florida's the place to go in the winter, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, it's all those different things combined. You got to boil all that stuff into a pot and see
Yeah.
what comes out of it and what's going to
Right.
taste good.
Right.
And that's where you end up going.
No, I think that's fascinating. And I imagine you are in attendance at most of these auctions, or a good number
Yeah, I
of
go to
them.
all of them. Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. So what's
Mhm.
the craziest auction moment you've ever experienced? Like what have you seen that
Oh,
just your jaw dropped, whether it was
yeah,
just,
there's a lot of
bitter
them.
behavior?
Yeah, well, it's always fun to watch I mean, I don't really have one specific one because it
Yeah.
happens, at least one to five in auction where you get something where, we have bitter battles all the time, but you get
Sure.
some of them turn into an extreme battle where the car really just is no longer the subject matter and it's just winning and
Yeah.
watching two guys
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
duke it
Yeah.
out. Those
Yeah.
are always fun to watch. I mean,
Yeah.
the numbers get silly, but it's fun to watch the
Yeah.
energy and the passion really just bleed out of these guys. That's really fun to watch.
Yeah.
Probably my most memorable moment was I don't even remember the year. It's definitely 10 years plus ago, but um, we at one point had um, I'm not sure how it came to be or how Dana got connected with him, but somehow we got connected with Jerry Lee Lewis,
Oh,
and
wow.
he had a 1957 Harley Davidson that he was gifted by Harley back in the day
Wow.
when new, and somehow he got connected with Dana and wanted to sell that bike with us. So I actually went to Jerry Lee Lewis's home in Tennessee, which was a wild experience on its
Oh, I
own.
bet.
Yeah. We actually couldn't we didn't get to meet Jerry Lee right away. We had about an hour where we had to essentially sit down and be interviewed by his wife to
Wow.
make sure we were trustworthy enough to meet him. So
Wow.
we
Wow.
did get to meet him. So thankfully we passed the
Okay,
tests that
good.
she was giving us. Yeah. Yeah. So that was good.
Wow.
Um,
Wow. Was he
but
what
yeah,
you
well,
expected him to be? Was he like, the great balls of fire guy that you,
you could see it in him. I mean, he was definitely
yeah,
he was on the older side. He was getting more frail. He
sure.
wasn't feeling good the day we were there. He
Okay.
was coming off of being sick, the flu or something. So
Okay.
he was a little off, but you could definitely see that
That's,
fire inside there. It was
that's
pretty
cool.
neat. So we got to go there, and then fast forward to Kissimmee. We sold the car or the motorcycle rather down in Kissimmee that year, and we
Okay.
came up with a wild harebrained idea that we pitched to him and said, hey, how cool would it be that if the reserve comes off your motorcycle, if we had a piano nearby and he played Great Balls of Fire when the reserve came off?
Love this.
And
I love this, Sam.
he said, well, yeah, that'd be all right. I'd do that. So I was like, okay, well, shit, I got to figure out how to get a piano out on the
Right,
stage
right.
without disrupting all this stuff, right?
Right.
So we figured it out. We got a grand piano on rollers
Wow.
we shoveled off the stage, and then we wheeled it out as the bike came on the block. Then we wheeled the piano out behind them, and the bit we introduced the motorcycle and we introduced Jerry
Yeah.
Lee's, waved to the crowd, and we sat him at the piano. So as the motorcycle selling, we had him sitting at the piano right behind the bike. And it's loud, it's crazy, it's bright, it's fast, and it wasn't really the auction process wasn't computing fast enough for him to keep up,
Sure.
which understandably so. It's I mean,
Yeah.
if you've never been there, it's a it's you got to be paying attention,
Right.
and he wasn't paying attention, so I was there sitting with him, and the fitting kept going. It was 250, then 275. I got to 300, I think, and then I got to like 325 or 350. I can't remember. And Frank Mecum went up to Jerry Lee and said, "We've got $325,000 bid. Do you want to sell it?" And he's looking at him like, "What? What?" Like he was confused and just didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so Frank looked at me because I had developed a little bit of a rapport with him. He was, comfortable with me,
Right.
and so I got down on one knee, and I got into his ear really close and I said, we have 300, I really slow. I said, we have
Yeah.
$325,000 bid. Do you want to sell it? And he looked at me like this and he goes, well, hell yes. It's like, we took the reserve off and then we fired it up to him and he proceeded to just
Oh, that
wrap
is
those keys.
great.
It was a really cool moment.
That
That's
is
probably what,
that is
that was neat.
great. You should have
Yeah.
sold that piano too.
Yeah. Right.
Now
It
that's
was
super
cool.
super cool. It's
Yeah. It was
that's
neat.
I mean it's those moments, right, that make Mecum, I think. And
Yeah. I think
yeah,
so.
that's exceptional. So you talked a little bit about the range from like a $10,000 collector car to the 250 GTO. What type of stuff doesn't fly for auction? What gets brought to you and you look at it and say, hell no, that's not happening.
Uh, yeah. It's a good question. I mean, really, it's a tough one because, the passion and collect, people like to collect what they like to collect. And that's
Right,
a very subjective thing, and
right.
so what I think is beautiful, you may think is ugly and vice versa. And, so, really what comes down to is, what makes sense financially. I mean, we have minimum fees and we have,
Right.
if somebody has something that, value wise isn't going to even meet a minimum, that, those types of situations just don't make sense. So I think
Right.
when you get down to that level, that's probably the most of it. Obviously
Yeah.
we need to have, that you get people that try and sell stuff, then it's my mother's this. And,
Sure.
we do make sure that, it has to be something that you physically have the ability to sell. You own it, you have title,
Hmm.
all that stuff's in line because we don't want to, we do that all on behalf of the buyers to make sure that they're going to get a clean transaction on the back
Right.
end. And that, so it's things like that. Um, but there's, part of Mecum's platform, and we're not the only, but, part of the auction platforms or public auctions is really, here to facilitate what the market is and let the market evolve and continue to grow and evolve what it's going to become. So, I'm not going to say that, something from, the 2000s that I don't think is collectible. There could
Right.
be there's a segment of people that are after that stuff. And so,
Right. Right.
we try to be as flexible and accommodating as we can within reason. And then, that's the cool thing is to watch those sort of trends and
Yep.
markets evolve out of what we do sell.
Yeah, yeah, and I want to come back to that because things are always changing, right? Run me through the process as a seller, if you will, to make it interesting. Let's say I've got a '73 Carrera RS, which I want to unload. I don't. I wish I did, but if I did, walk me through how that would go. I come to you, then what happens?
Yeah. So, I mean, you could one of two ways. You can either, you can set up an inquiry online and
Okay,
enter your information in the car information and all that and submit it that way. And then that information gets to our consignment sales team here at the home office. Um, and they'll reach out to you to discuss that car and kind of help understand it. You can also just pick up the phone and call us directly and
hmm,
talk about it right away. But really, what we're going to want to know is, tell us about the car. Help us, give us some tidbits and information.
yeah,
What do you know about it? What have you, how long have you owned it? What have you done to it? All the particulars to help
yeah,
how we might
yeah,
build a description, right, for the car. Um, and we'll talk about value. We're
uh,
a reserve based. We start with a reserve based company in that we allow sellers to put reserves on their cars to protect them,
okay,
to protect their value. So if, well, let's just say we'll use round numbers. Let's say you sell a car or you want to sell a car and you believe it's worth $100,000,
mm,
and the our sales results in the market maybe we think it's probably more like 75, $80,000.
hmm,
We're not necessarily going to tell you we'll consign it, but only if you put a reserve of $75,000 on the
okay,
car. That
okay,
that's not really how we operate. If you truly believe it's worth 100, the data tells us it's probably 75, 80.
hmm,
Where that's not too far apart. So we would go ahead and let you place a reserve on that car of 100 and let the market decide what it's worth. Right. And so I'm skipping a lot of details, but once you get to the auction itself and you have a reserve of 100, that means that we cannot sell that car unless it reaches 100 grand, or we keep you informed of what the high bid is, and you might make a decision right there in the moment. Say, okay, there's 5,000 people here,
hmm,
and the high bid is 82,000. you're in charge to make the decision of, do you want to lift the reserve, take it off and sell it for the 82, or do you want to take the car home and,
Right.
you know, hold on to it because you truly believe it's worth 100. So
Yeah.
that's a really, I think a really good feature to have in place to keep the sellers to have control,
Right.
and not feel like they have a bad experience. Whereas if in the flip side of that, you sold it without reserve,
Mm.
uh, and you think it's worth 100 and it sells for 70, now you're extremely upset. You're upset
Right.
with us because we didn't get your value, where we didn't think the value was there to begin with. But
Right. Right.
and now you're just going to tell all your friends, why would you do that? It was lost 30 grand. Well, did you though? You lost 30,000 of what you think it was worth, but maybe the market decided it wasn't.
Right.
So
Right.
we have that option. We also have a no reserve option. If it's
Okay.
a
Okay.
standpoint of, you're confident what the car's worth. It's a known car with track record, comparables out the wazoo.
Mhm.
It's probably going to bring between this and that. Sell it no reserve. We actually charge less of a seller's commission for that. We know that
Okay.
there's going to be a transaction. So instead of
Right.
10%, we would sell it for 6%
Yeah.
commission,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But as far as consigning it, back to the original question, it's
Yeah.
fairly easy. I mean, we
Yeah.
walk you through all that. We'll walk through that, have that conversation up front. If it's something you want to do, um, you know, it's a simple contract that you do via or online and via email. Um, whether you have photos, you can send, depending on, we usually send a photographer out to photograph the
Okay.
vehicle, um, help you set up transport to get it to the event. If you need the help there, obviously, like you mentioned earlier, we do have a transport company here to try
Mhm.
and make all the points and all the process as seamless or as hands off as you want it to be. Um, and then, we help build the description out. We send that back and forth, get approval from you, the seller, get that to us. We're representing the car as you want it to be represented. If you make any claims that
Mhm.
it's got certain things, whether that, certain pieces of documentation or
Mhm.
certain stories or certain owners and things, we validate all that to make sure that
Okay. Okay.
what we're representing is true and correct. I mean, you get
Okay.
people sometimes that try and slip certain tidbits in that don't
Sure.
necessarily have support. That makes it a
Yeah.
little bit
Yeah.
harder to, when they're not necessarily true. So, um, facts and figures are part of it, checking that stuff and making sure that the seller has an accurate description
Yeah.
based on
Yeah.
his representation, and that Mecum is comfortable that we're not misrepresenting the car in any way, um, to lead a buyer down a path that's wrong. So,
Right. Right.
uh,
So John Voight's LeBaron, for example, you're going to catch that right before it
yeah,
gets.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I had no idea that you had that sort of full spectrum of services, I guess. And that's got to give a perspective, seller, some peace of mind for
yeah,
sure. And
absolutely. I mean, the
so,
nice thing is it gives the seller the opportunity to, we can do most, if not all the work, take all the heavy
yeah.
lifting burden off of
Yeah.
you, sit back, relax, and watch it all go down. But I will say that some of the best sales that we have, especially with guys that are offering larger collections of cars
Mhm.
at one time, the partnership success is really what makes it work. When you have an engaged seller and Mecum working together to develop the presentation together,
Yeah.
that really makes all the difference.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's cool. Since in the time that you've been doing this, 20 odd, it's been 20, how many years? 20 years, 20 odd years, 25 years you've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
involved. You've seen a lot of changes, right? You've seen the online auctions, blow up and this kind of thing. Yet, Mecum continues to just grow and grow in prestige. How do you see things changing the next 10 years for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Something we're always working on and thinking about. And I think that, as it continues to evolve, I think there's we've seen the rise of online auctions and the success of those, which I think is great. Honestly, I think it's, we've seen the rise in that. We have online bidding as well, obviously in
Mhm.
conjunction with our live bidding.
Right, right.
So folks can log in and bid live right in the moment along with our cars. And we've seen, since COVID, really that spiked a lot. And it's, I mean, we do about 25 to 30% of our sales are online to online bidders,
Yeah,
through our live
yeah.
events.
Wow. Okay. Didn't
Um,
realize that.
yeah. So, I think it's all those things and really just refining all those different features and making sure that we're offering the right mix to everybody to,
Hmm.
to be able to do business the way you want to do it. Some
Right.
people, personally, I'm one of those guys. If I'm going to spend a large chunk of change on a car, I want to touch it and feel it before
Right.
I pull the trigger. I think
Right.
it's easier to do with, some, especially with, talking about the rise of, the late model the supercar
Hmm.
stuff that's
Hmm.
really going to gangbusters right now. A lot of those, what the specs are. You can get away with probably a sight unseen purchase with some of
Sure.
those, especially if they're, low mile, no mile stuff. That's a lot easier to make those decisions than, if I'm talking about buying a 69 Camaro that was restored and all the different things. I kind of want to lay eyes on that,
Right.
personally.
Right.
Some people are, but I think that society is getting more and more comfortable every year that goes by that buying things sight unseen on the internet. And I think that,
Hmm.
where will that continue to just evolve to where no one talks to each other ever down the road,
Right. Right.
in person?
Right.
Maybe, but I also
Yeah.
think that there's, everything's very cyclical. And I think that,
Yeah.
um, I don't think I think the online auction style will continue to grow. I think what we do in our
Hmm.
current state today, will remain stable, and continue to grow incrementally. And I think it will continue to, as it people eventually want to connect with people. And I think that
Right.
our venues, our events create a platform for people to engage with one another as a
Yes.
community. And I
Yes.
think that,
Yes.
combining those two things together is really probably most of it. And then
You,
there's also all the things we don't know, what we don't know.
yeah.
And
Yeah. But you touched on something really key, and I think that's authenticity, right? You cannot fake the funk, right, when it comes to a purchase like this. And there's so much emotion wrapped up in a collector car purchase, right? So that's something that you have that the strictly online auctions just can't offer.
yeah,
And just to put your hands on something,
yeah.
makes
And some
all
people
the
are
difference.
fine with that, and I think
Yeah.
that, the entertainment value of the excitement that you get in a room isn't just about, when we say excitement and entertainment, it's not just a car ringing the bell for a big number. It's, you could be in a room with a whole lot of like-minded individuals having a really
Yeah.
good time together, whether they're paying attention to the auction or they're just there.
Yeah.
And you can feel that energy. That energy
Yes.
is
Yes. Yeah.
that's something you can't produce inside of a computer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so that's something special that I think that will continue to, as people sort of discover connectivity, human connectivity
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
um, I think there'll be another resurgence of growth just from that, from
Yep.
being, so tech that it'll be, you know, sort of a history repeating itself moment
Yeah.
where that's,
Yeah.
cool again for the younger generations.
Right, right, right. And you are in such a unique position, right, to see, these cars come and go and auction trends over the 25 years. What do you think are some of the best buys coming across the Mecum auction block right now?
Um, it's a good question. It's obviously I would like to know for sure because I'd try and pile them all up and hold, if I
Sure.
could, but
Yeah.
things shock me all the time. But I think,
Yeah.
there's, we're starting to see more and more, JDM stuff is
Hmm.
starting to catch on stronger than, I mean, it's been strong, but, when you get into really some of the real exclusive cars, but even some of the
Hmm.
more, I would say, run of the mill stuff is starting
Hmm.
to pop up. I mean, it's the same story, right? I mean, even with you
Yeah.
had a million Mustangs, and yet here Mustang values grow. Well,
Yeah.
why would that be with a million? Well, how many just got drove to death and died off, and
Right.
how many are left that were cared for? And I think that,
Right.
those, you're seeing a lot more of that from the 2000s era. I think is a interesting era because my personal opinion, that era was pretty rough on design and,
Right.
power and all that. But there's pockets within all that.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that those are, I think, things to continue to pay attention to for sure
Yeah.
from that decade. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
I think there's, um, there's just so much. It's really a hard
No,
question
no,
to answer.
no, but I think JDM is really where it's at because I read something the other day that the most expensive JDM car ever sold at auction, I think, was a Lexus LFA, the Nürburgring edition. I think it was 1.4 or 1.5. That's the most expensive Japanese car ever sold at auction. And you look at the gulf between that and that 250 GTO, right? That's what, 30 times the
Right.
the sale price, right? The hammer
Yeah.
price. So, and my generation, our generation, and those younger than us have an emotional connection, I think, to those cars that
Yeah. I mean,
certainly,
I've got emotional connection to I've got on my hit list of, I haven't found it yet, but it's I really want a 1993 Acura Legend two-door coupe.
oh, come on. Now you're talking my language.
Why? I mean, to me, that resonates to me because that car was cool as hell when I was in high
Oh,
school,
yeah. Oh, it
and
looks
so,
so
and
good.
you can find one with a six-speed transmission. They're cool,
Hmm.
so,
Yeah.
that's what I was kind of meaning by some of, I wouldn't say it's obscure, but it was,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
wouldn't really think of that car from a collector car standpoint as much as, you would the stuff that gets all the press and attention.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but I think there's a lot of that stuff out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Make it beige, right? I mean, just that was right.
Mine's white. The one
White
I
over
want is
gray.
white over tan with the
Over 10.
gold trim.
Yes, yes, yes. Remember what a big
that's the
thing
one.
that like the gold package was there for a minute. But
Yeah.
but that era of cars, like the Infiniti, G20, the Nissan SER, right, Sentra, it's just because when I was poking around in my 81 BMW 320, the rich kids at school all drove that kind of stuff, or CRX SI,
Yeah.
that was the stuff that I always wanted and never had, or Prelude, and I don't
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it'll
Prelude.
ever
That's
be
another one.
another one. Yeah. I mean, now that NSXs have completely,
Yeah.
skyrocketed, but
Yep.
they were
Yep.
such wonderful cars, and they still are. You just don't get to drive them so often. I had a new Integra A-Spec press car recently with a manual transmission, and it brought
Mhm.
back so many memories of those cars, right, from the
Yeah.
80s and the 90s and early 2000s, right? The shifter was
Yep.
amazing. Those were just great cars, and
Yeah.
and we're touching on something too. We've mentioned earlier too, but this emotion that's involved, and I think that collector cars, are one of the few markets where emotion really beats logic. So, how much of ultimately what you're doing is selling emotion at the end of the day?
I think it's more. I would say, yes, there's a lot of emotion involved, but I would
Yeah,
say it's it's nostalgia really that we're selling. I think is about a better
yeah, okay, yeah,
word to put
yeah,
on it, because I think it's all about, like I just said that about that legend, like that, it's memories, it's moments in time,
yeah,
um, that you want to capture, and you can capture it through the cars and I think that's, nostalgia is, we all have. I say a lot. I think everybody, at least Americans, I think we're all car people, whether we know it or
yeah,
not, because we all have memories that'll have something to do with a car at some point in
yeah,
time.
yeah,
It's just whether some of us are more collector minded than others, but everyone's got a memory and everybody can connect, and that's really the coolest thing to me is listening to those stories that and
yeah,
randomness that people have associated with cars, whether they're a car person or not. When
yeah,
I go to, gatherings at home or whatever, and when people learn, if I'm telling people what I do, most people I interact with know very well what Mecum Auctions is, but you
sure,
get into some obscure party somewhere or whatever, and you tell them, like, oh, and they're intrigued by it because they don't understand it,
mm,
and it's a world that, uh, really is, I think once people get introduced, very similar to how I started in this business. So when you get introduced
mhm,
to it and you learn about what's happening, it's so intriguing that you want to learn more,
yeah.
and you just continue to just keep chewing on more and more and more until all of a sudden you're a car lover and you don't even realize
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, I know we're nearing in on an hour here, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I do have to ask what's in your own garage, right?
Yeah. So I just got rid of a 2023 Hellcat that I had for a couple of
Okay,
years. That
cool.
was the fun car. That car
Yeah,
was a blast. I put 25,000 miles on it, which,
really. Okay.
yeah, I just drove the snot out of it. It
Yeah,
was fun.
a soft
Um,
spot for those.
yeah, they're fun. I had a 76 Eldorado convertible. I currently don't have any cars in the garage. Let me just be
Okay,
honest with you. I'm putting the second kid through college, so I'm getting
sure,
that done and over with. So I've
sure.
bought and sold a few cars over the years, and really I think once I got 2 more years left with one daughter in school, when she's out, then it becomes me time again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I've got a hit list, but yeah, it's the Hellcat was fun. I drive an F-150 pickup truck that I put a lot of
Okay.
Roush upgrades on, and
Right on. Yeah.
um, so that's kind of my daily driver now, it's still fun.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I get surrounded, I get to see them all every day and
Well,
enjoy
that's
everybody
the
else's
right.
cars.
Yeah.
The problem is
You get
I've
to.
got a little bit of like ADHD taste. Like I love, oh,
Uh-huh.
I love Shelby's, and then all of a sudden, oh, that's really cool. And as if I deep dive research into something else, then I kind of start to fall in love with that. So I would definitely going to need a big garage when it comes time to start acquiring
Right.
stuff again. So,
Right. And I hope to see a two-door Legend in your garage at some
oh, it's
point.
coming.
But
I will
right
get it.
right.
I
I want to
almost pulled the
drive it
trigger
if you.
one. There was one in San Francisco. I think it was like
Yeah.
2 or 3 years ago. I found one. And I just got busy, and it was
Yeah.
across the country, and just I should have just went out. I should have bought it sight unseen and just dealt with but I didn't. I didn't pull the
Yeah.
trigger.
Do
So
you know who Myron Vernus is by chance?
Myron Vernus.
He goes by the Junkman on Instagram. He's a guy, he's in Akron, Ohio, but he collects all that kind of stuff. He's got like 300 of them. Just all that, wouldn't be on everybody's radar, but it's on his, it's
I'll
on
have to look
mine.
him up. Maybe
You
he's
have to
got one
look him
sitting
up
there.
because
Yeah.
I think you'd appreciate his taste in cars. And he's got a lot of
Yeah.
the offbeat stuff too. We had him on the show a couple months ago, maybe 3-4 months ago. He was wonderful. He's a great guy. And I know he'll be at Car Week, and I'm looking forward to meeting him in person. And you guys will be at Car Week very obviously too.
Yep.
When this
Yep.
episode airs, it's hard to believe, but Monterey will be just over a week away. And you guys will have a big presence. Specifically, you'll be at the Del Monte Golf Course in Monterey from the 13th through the 15th with over 600 vehicles, I think, and that includes 100 vintage motorcycles, which is cool. So what are you most excited about, and what should we be looking for when we're there?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think we've got almost 30 Ferraris to choose from at this
Really?
event.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
headlined by a 96 F50. That'll be a good one to watch. We've got a
Absolutely.
beautiful 63 250 Lusso. That's a beautiful
Wow.
car. That's on the classic side. We've got a 33 Duesenberg Model J, disappearing
Wow.
top convertible coupe.
Wow.
Super cool looking car. I'm excited to watch that one cross the block. It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
We had it on display at our auction in Indy when we announced it for sale. So it's been in our office here waiting to get on a truck to go out west to Monterey. And so I walk by it every time I go out to use the washroom, and I fall in love with it every single time I walk by it. So that'll be cool to watch. So yeah, some really good stuff. We've got, it's
the best stuff.
Yeah. And out on the golf course, it's a great place to walk around
I really enjoyed seeing the Mecum preview last year and look forward to this year as well. Hopefully we'll cross paths at some point. But we should tell people where to find you online too. Where is Mecum Auctions online and on social media, Sam?
Yeah, so mecum.com, mecum.com. All of our schedules on there, all of our upcoming lots for upcoming auctions. We've got obviously all of our Monterey catalog is listed online now to kind of peer through. Very simple, easy to navigate. I think we've got cars published out through our Dallas auction, which is out in October. So quite a lot of inventory to check out and get excited about.
Awesome.
But yeah, Monterey is just 2 weeks away. I can't believe it's already here. So
well, it's going to be great, right? It's best time of the year, right? So,
yeah, no, it's a fun.
I know you'll be working, but I would love to say hi, given the chance. And
swing by. If you're able to swing by, I'll be there. So please do. We'll hook up and say hello. Love to meet you face to face.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, Sam Murtaugh, Chief Operating Officer at Mecum Auctions. This has been really fun. This has been great. Appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your time. Hopefully we can have you on again sometime.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you very much. Yeah, awesome.
Thank you. Thanks.
Look forward to it. And if you're new to the show, please consider leaving a quick rating or review on your platform of choice. Thank you, Sam Murtaugh, COO of Mecum Auctions. And until next time, we're That Car Show.